HuHa 2, ha!
Happy Harry's HuHa 2 Patridge!
Hello my little grasshoppers and welcome to episode 10 of Happy Harry's HuHa 2 How-Tos. Originally this week's lesson was going to be on sound design and lip sync, which are only sort of tenuously linked at best. But I decided to make this a pure lip sync tutorial, which has left it a little shorter than normal. But we're going to move on to sound next week, which ties in better with the theme of next week's episode, which is storytelling. Ooh. But still, we do have quite a bit to cover today, so why not hop in, little grasshoppers? Let's get to it. Now, lip sync lesson number 1 is, it's not actually all that important. It isn't the be-all, end-all of your character animation. Certainly if your characters are moving their mouths out of time with the dialogue, or the mouths are making the wrong shapes, it will detract from your film. But it won't detract from your film certainly any worse than bad character animation will, which is really important to get that right. Or if you've got a bad story or a bad idea that's not worth communicating, no one's going to care about lip sync, so you have to prioritize. And one thing that I think it's important for animators to remember is audience members are not typically looking at characters' mouths when they're watching a film or a cartoon. In fact, they're looking at the eyes, and if you're going to concentrate on getting one aspect of the face right, make sure it's the window to the soul, as they say. Make sure the character's eyes are blinking and moving around and staying alive, and don't fret a whole lot about the mouth. In fact, if you've ever used a sock puppet before and had it flap open and shut in time with what you're saying, you basically know how to lip sync. You know that sort of between breaks in words and when there's percussive noises like T's and B's, that the mouth is mostly closed, and then when the character, or the sock puppet in this case, is making the most noise, their mouth should be open. And that's really the basics of lip sync, although we're not going to look at just the basics today, we're going to go into a lot more depth. And one more thing before I do start and get into the meat of today's lesson, remember, not every character has a mouth or lips in the sort of traditional sense. Here we've got a robot, and he's got like a little light in his mouth that flashes. That's an alternative you could give your character. Here we've got some kind of pelican with a big beak, and that will move much more like the sock puppet, and not like a pair of human lips. And here we have a kind of old major with a bushy moustache, and that could just move up and down when the character talks because it's covering his entire mouth there. So those are some alternatives. However, today we're going to be looking at the human mouth, and before we can create interesting shapes with the mouth, we need to look at a few of the components that make it up. So to begin with, we have the jaw, and that hinges at about that point typically on a human character, and can flap open and shut and even move side to side a little bit. And remember, it is the jaw that moves on a human and not this top row of teeth, because that's actually fixed onto the skull and is therefore going to be pretty rock solid. Also, we have the lips, which can do a ton of things and move in a whole range of ways. They can become very small and tight and pursed, or we can have lips that flatten out to create sort of or b sounds, which we'll look at in a little bit. They can actually peel back to reveal teeth, or the teeth can bite into that bottom lip, which will curl under the teeth. And of course, we can have great big mouth movements where the lips are opening really big and wide to reveal the inside of the mouth. And finally, we have the tongue, which might not seem hugely important, but as you will see, there are certain mouth shapes or phonemes, which we'll come to, which can be affected hugely by the tongue. So let's now take a stinkingly in-depth look at phonemes, and phonemes is basically just a collective fancy term for mouth shapes, and mouth shapes are important because different mouth shapes produce different sounds, and sound is what we're concerned with today. not letters. Remember that different letters can produce different sounds or many sounds. The letter A, for example, can sound like A or A or and even though I'll use letters as a shorthand to represent the sound we're creating, it is the sound itself that we're concerned with. So, before we jump into looking at all the different phonemes, I will warn you that I'm about to make lots of very silly noises with my mouth. Please forgive me. Here we go. To begin with, we have this open mouth shape that's used for a lot of vowel type sounds, like ah, I, and you can tell by using that same mouth shape that if you try it yourself, you can create pretty much all of those noises without moving your mouth. Here, we have a little bit of a variation. The mouth is more closed up, with the corners of the lip sort of peeling back a little, and that can create an E type sound. If you try going from to E, you will feel the corners of your mouth draw back, and that's completely natural, and that's the shape that your mouth will need to create to make that noise. Here, I have another sound, and if you remember 2 phonemes ago, we actually have an shape here. But this is a little different because it's a bit more oval, and the only reason I've shown you this is because we're going to transition from to oo, and the mouth shapes that you'll need to create that will be o, oo, and you can tell that the mouth is actually getting smaller and more pursed during the process. I'll do that again. O, oo. And also the W sound at the beginning of W will actually be made also by that small pursed circular mouth shape. Here we have a mouth shape which is mostly closed, and that can be used to create hard percussive sounds like g, j, k, n, s, t, z. And with a slight variation, we can actually make those same noises through mostly gritted teeth. G, j, k, n, s, t, z. Here again is a slight variation with the top lip a little peeled back, almost like a kiss, and that's used to create ch, sh type noises. And again we have the lips a bit pursed, and that's more for the r beginning of a rolling sound, a little similar actually to the w sound, r, with the mouth small at the beginning, although the r could come more from the back of the throat, r, which would look a lot more open-mouthed and similar to our vowel type shape. Here the lips are entirely closed, and that's totally necessary to create sounds like b, m, p, and that's why ventriloquists have trouble with those sounds, because they will have to close their mouth. Here we have actually something with the tongue, a bit of tongue action. The tongue is actually kind of licking the top row of teeth, and that's necessary for creating an l type sound. To try and create an L type sound without using your tongue is nigh impossible. L. Here we have the top row of teeth sort of biting into the bottom lip with the top lip peeled back, and that is useful for creating f or v sounds. And finally here we have the top row of teeth biting into an exposed end of the tongue, and again that top lip is peeled back, and that's necessary for creating th type noises. Now I know that's a lot to take on board, but don't fret, you have the ultimate reference directly under your nose in the form of your own mouth. If you forget what any of those mouth shapes actually look like, or which sound correlates to which mouth shape, create it with your own mouth, look in the mirror and figure it out that way. Now, this is all very well and good, but it's kind of useless unless we actually put it into practice. So what I'm going to do now is show you a piece of animation I created to a piece of recorded dialogue. The character is mouthless, and we are going to give him some lip sync. This audio clip is going to get very annoying. Damn straight it is, and you're going to have the pleasure of finding out just how annoying in a little while. Now, I always create the animation after I've made the dialogue if I'm going to have my characters talking, and I essentially animate to the dialogue. That's what I did here, but I took the sound out again so that I could show you how it would be imported into an Adobe Flash file. I know not everyone is using Flash, but a lot of you are, and so therefore I figure it's still going to be pretty relevant. So here's how to import sound into an Adobe Flash file. First of all, we create a brand new layer, then go to Window, Properties, and hit Properties again. Alternatively, you can hit Control and F3, and that will bring up the Properties box. Here it is down the bottom. Now then, I'm going to go to File and Import to Library, and select annoying.mp3 from my ridiculously messy desktop. So that's now in our library. Now to put that in my timeline here, I'm going to go to my clean layer, select a random frame, but in this case I'm making it the first frame, why not? And then once that frame is selected here and highlighted black, go down to Sound, hit Annoying MP3. Now here's where all the sounds in our library will be listed because we've only imported one, there's only one listed. Hit Annoying MP3. And in my case, the sync is already set to stream. If that is not set to stream, that's what you want to set it to. Set to stream. And the sound is in our film. Okay, so let's get some lip sync done. I'm going to create a brand new layer to draw all of my mouths onto and keep it separate to the character animation layer. That way I can have the mouth moving independently and don't have to sort of lock it down to the frames which I've established the character is going to move on. So to begin with, let's draw in a kind of closed mouth shape here. Going to have the character look slightly perturbed because he's about to say something very boring, and that mouth shape will do us fine up until he begins to talk. So okay, so about this point we're going to have to draw in the mouth shape for the. I'm going to turn on my onion skin and make everything look really confusing, but that'll make things a lot quicker for me. Have that tongue pop out slightly. And then the frame after that, let's actually push that th shape a little bit further and just have it kind of curl up even more. And then from that, he's going to go to the open mouth I shape for this. So he's got a bigger open mouth there with the tongue just sort of tucking away. And from that, we're going to have the character begin to, I think, move up into the shape for the S mouth shape, and his teeth will be a little clenched for that, so this is sort of a transitional frame. Let's just see how that is looking.
This audio...
Okay, pretty good. So now I'm ready to add in the S mouth shape as he begins to say this. Now the head is beginning to move down on the character animation layer, so naturally I'm going to want the mouth to move with the head so it remains anchored to the head, and extend out that hissing mouth shape there for the S, this. But now he's beginning to transition into OR for this audio clip. So I'm going to have actually have that mouth begin to take on a more oval shape here. And then after, he's going to be dragging it out even more because it's a long mouth shape that he holds for audio. It's all. Okay, now he's making a sort of percussive D sound because he's saying audio, so the mouth's a lot more tightened and sort of closed. Audio. And then after the D, after the D comes the sort of tight E shape that we looked at with the corners of the mouth pulled back. And let's see how that's looking.
This audio clip.
Now we're going to introduce the O shape after audio. Make the mouth a kind of oval shape. And from O, he's going to transition into the percussive K for clip. And what we're going to do is sort of blend those mouth shapes together, which is often what you'll need to do. Sometimes a mouth shape will not be a clear-cut O or K, but a kind of mixture between the two as they blend from O clip. So O, make that mouth shape a little smaller. And we're sort of blending, like I say, the small pursed O with the hard K mouth. Audio. And then as he begins to pull back to make the vowel I sound for audio clear, I'm going to show his tongue and introduce that, because his tongue is going to have to create an L in the transitional frame between K and I. Audio clear. Clear. And let's see how that is looking.
This audio clip is...
So we're getting there. You may have noticed that I had to drag out a few mouth shapes and make them last a little longer there, but that's part and parcel when you're doing lip sync. There's a lot of trial and error, there's a lot of watching things back and making changes until it works for you, and that's why I like to keep my mouths on a separate layer so I can change them easily without doing too much damage to the character animation. As you're probably beginning to understand, this is a very tedious process which takes a long time, and that's a pretty good reason for why a lot of animators don't like this part of the job. So what I'm going to do now is animate the rest of this clip and speed things up, and then we'll take a look at it when I'm done.
This audio clip is going to get very annoying.
And didn't it just? Well, there we have it, folks. I coloured the mouth in just to make it a little easier for you to see there at the end, but I think you'll agree that's a fairly effective way of doing character lip sync. Now, there are a few things you could do different. Stylistically, the character could have a jaw that actually moved while he or she spoke. I went for a much more cartoony design here that didn't really incorporate that. But if you did have your jaw sort of move up and down on your character, that could very well affect your character animation. And indeed, it may be worth actually animating your lip sync with your character on the same layer and at the same time. This, for me, was more of an afterthought, but it's the way that I tend to work and the way that I prefer to work. I'm afraid that today's lesson this week may have been a little dry, but it was something that we needed to get through, and hopefully you'll join me for next week when we look at storytelling, which is filmmaking in the truest sense. So join me then for more Happy Harry's HuHa 2 how-tos.